Today on the newscast, Israel prepares for a multi-front war against Iran and its proxies. Plus, just how much money does Iran provide to those terror proxies? The numbers may shock you. That's next. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. We've been telling you here on the newscast over the past few months, if not longer, about this Iranian ring of fire that surrounds Israel on all sides. Folks, remember, Israel is roughly the size of the state of New Jersey, and yet it is surrounded now by Iranian proxies, whether it's Hezbollah in southern Lebanon to the north, Iranian-backed Shia militias in Syria and Iraq, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza to the south, or even further south, the Houthis in Yemen. Israel is quite literally surrounded on all sides by these Iranian terror proxies who are armed to the teeth with hundreds of thousands of rockets and missiles when you combine all of their assets, and then thousands of attack drones, all of these weapons pointed directly at the world's one and only Jewish state. So needless to say, Israel is in a very precarious position right now, and Israeli leaders are well aware. Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, gave a very important speech yesterday, folks, or I should say, he made comments to reporters in a briefing yesterday in which he outlined the state of play, the nature of the threat, and also gave some staggering numbers in terms of Iran's support for Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and these other terror entities. Folks, wait till you hear this. And by the way, these remarks by Yoav Gallant yesterday, again, very important, as you are about to hear, they were barely picked up in the mainstream media. Surprise, surprise. And folks, that's one reason we do what we do right here on the Watchman News channel. So hey, if you have not subscribed, be sure to click the subscribe button and also click that notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. We would love to have you here with us every single day as watchmen and women on the wall for such a time as this. And what a time it is, as Yoav Gallant, Israel's defense minister, is very aware of. Now, in these remarks yesterday, he laid out something we've been saying for months, again, here in the newscast. Israel's next war, and war is coming, we're sad to say, but we see the chess pieces moving on the board. He said in the next war, it will likely be a multi-front war. Gallant said, look, the days of limited engagements are likely over. Now, what does a multi-front war mean? And that's the term he used, multi-front. And he said that's exactly what Israel is preparing for. We had a taste of this about 2 weeks ago, as we reported here in the newscast. Rocket barrages coming from 3 separate areas almost simultaneously against Israel. We had dozens of rockets fired out of southern Lebanon and Gaza, and also several rockets fired out of Syria over a 48-hour span. Now, Israel responded with airstrikes against these various targets, but the fact remains, to me, folks, that was a dry run of sorts by Iran and its proxies to see how Israel would respond. And at the same time, and Gallant mentioned this as well yesterday, we had internal troubles in Israel in terms of rioters backed by Hamas storming and barricading themselves inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, and also terror attacks carried out in the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria, deadly terror attacks, all of this unfolding during a 48-hour span about 2 weeks ago. And add to that the internal discord in Israel right now, where we still have tens of thousands at least of protesters in the streets protesting proposed judicial reform that's been put forward by the government of Benjamin Netanyahu. And so it is a tumultuous time in Israel. It's a time where, frankly, its enemies, led by Iran, see the internal discord and they are salivating, folks. They sense weakness. I think they're wrong. I think Israel certainly will come together to deal with these external threats. but it certainly doesn't help matters when you have hundreds of thousands of people in the streets on a regular basis protesting against Israel's government. It gives off a different kind of feel to Israel's enemies, as did, let's be frank, 5 elections in 4 years. Again, it gives off a bit of a chaotic feel, and Israel's enemies are watching all of this very closely. Israel is now surrounded by these Iranian proxies, and what Iran will do in that future engagement is activate this entire ring of fire and attempt to bombard Israel on all sides. Now, we've called this coming war the Great Northern War. And you may say, well, what about Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the Houthis? They're all in the south. Yes, they are. But I believe this war will be ignited and the bulk of the fighting will take place in the north. And that means one thing in particular, Hezbollah. Hezbollah has some 150,000 rockets and missiles pointed at every inch of Israel right now. It's an untenable situation for Israel. It can't be sustained to have an entity devoted to your destruction, armed to the teeth on your northern border. Then you have Iran in Syria, the Assad regime as well. So the bulk of the fighting, I believe, the heaviest fighting will be in the north, but certainly Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the Houthis, other members of this ring of fire will throw their hats in the ring as well, attempt to create another front for Israel to deal with as it's battling a very formidable foe in the form of Hezbollah to the north. What does this mean prophetically? We'll get to it in a minute. But before I go, some of the most stunning comments, I mentioned this at the top, that Yoav Gallant made yesterday. And again, the mainstream media just completely ignored this. But here you go. He did a roll call, basically, folks, of Iran's terror proxies and how much money the Iranian regime provides them each year. Now, we know Iran also is pouring weapons and training and supplies into these entities as well. But here's the annual price tag, according to Yoav Gallant, Israel's defense minister, who I think would have a pretty good grasp on this. $700 million per year provided by the Iranian regime to Hezbollah. $100 million a year provided by the Iranian regime to Hamas. Tens of millions provided by Iran to Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Hundreds of millions each to Shia militias in Syria and Iraq. Hundreds millions more to the Houthis in Yemen. And lastly, according to Yoav Gallant, billions to the Assad regime in Syria. Folks, count that price tag up. That's billions of dollars each year that the Iranian regime is pouring into terrorism and pouring into its ultimate goal to destroy the state of Israel. Now, you see Iran right now battling internal unrest, people coming against that wicked regime, the Iranian people rising up for months now. And by the way, pray for the people of Iran who are the main victims of this tyrannical regime. And you have economic problems in Iran, clearly, and people struggling. And yet, Iran is using billions to supply terror and not care for its own people, or help at least assist its own people. And as I go, a quick thought, you think back to that Iran nuclear deal, folks, when the Obama administration gift-wrapped the Iranian regime with hundreds of billions of dollars in sanctions relief. Now you have a pretty good idea where at least some of that sanctions relief went. It went to sponsor terror. And if the Biden administration gets its way and strikes another deal with Iran, guess what? That money will go to the very same place, into the hands not of needy kids in Tehran, but into the hands of terrorists in Hamas and Hezbollah. It's a sad fact. Last thing, prophetically, what does this mean? I do believe that before the war of Gog and Magog that the prophet Ezekiel lays out in chapters 38 and 39 of the book of Ezekiel, there will be a war before that war. And I believe it will be Israel going toe-to-toe with the likes of Hezbollah, Hamas, that ring of fire, and perhaps directly with Iran. Perhaps a strike on Iran's nuclear facilities is a trigger to all of this. But I believe there will be a war before that huge prophetic war of Gog and Magog. Some people say it's the Psalm 83 war. What do you think? I'd love to see your comments there. Great being with you today. I know this is heavy news, but remember, the God of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. He's watching over his land, and his people. It won't be easy, but Israel will prevail against its enemies. I think of the book of Psalms, which says on multiple occasions that God surveys the world, he sees Israel's enemies, and he laughs. So take heart, because the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is still on the throne. Thanks so much for joining us here today on the Watchman Newscast. Until tomorrow, God bless you, and remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.